It's like drinking poison, but expecting the other person to get sick. So many years, I had the right to not forgive somebody, and I had the right to hold them accountable for what they did. And in fact, they didn't even really have any idea that I was doing that. They didn't even care. Try and understand where and why your forgiveness is not being given, and do yourself a favor and let it go. Welcome to Krystal Rowe Impact, a space dedicated to empowering you to be the change that your bloodline has been waiting for. Join me, and together, let's inspire change. Welcome back to the Krystal Rowe Impact Podcast. And today we're going to talk about the importance of forgiveness in our personal healing and growth journey. Now, forgiveness frees us from the situation. And a lot of the time we get caught up with owning the right to not forgive that person. And I only say that because I did that. For so many years, I had the right to not forgive somebody, and I had the right to hold them accountable for what they did. And in fact, they didn't even really have any idea that I was doing that. They didn't even care. They didn't know that I was still holding this unforgiveness and this bitterness towards this situation. And it brings me to think of unforgiveness in a way that it's like drinking poison, but expecting the other person to get sick. Isn't that crazy? You drink the poison, expecting the other person to get sick. Let that sink in for a little bit. What do we achieve by holding on to that unforgiveness? I think for me that the topic of unforgiveness or forgiveness is a really touchy feeling, because there's been a lot of times in my life that I have had to, in a way, let people get away with things. And I matched that with forgiveness when in fact it wasn't that at all. And I think the power of forgiving somebody is really understanding that you are releasing yourself from them. It's not giving them the power or saying that what happened was okay. It's not doing that at all. It's actually just saying, you know what, I'm not going to be a part of this situation, and I am freeing myself and releasing it away. It's like the whole ball and chain. The person that hurt you or done something bad to you is the ball, and the forgiveness is the chain, and you're holding on to it because you have the right to. But when you let that go, just imagine that. Close your eyes for a second and imagine a big old dirty stone ball and a rusty old chain, and having to hold on to that. Visualize holding on to that with all your strength and then letting it go. Can you imagine how freeing that is? And that's forgiveness. That's letting go. That's where the power is. And it's within you to make that choice. I held on to a lot of resentment and a lot of unforgiveness or forgiveness, whatever you want to call it, towards my mum for many years, because I had this idea of a mother-daughter relationship, and for some reason I had to keep showing up as the mum in that relationship, and I just wanted, I guess, that nurturing affection and understanding of a mum. Don't get me wrong, my mum was great in regards to providing and creating a home for me, a safe home to some degree. But when it came down to things, I ended up being the mum, and it made a huge impact on my life. And even growing up into my adulthood, it made an impact on how I parented it as well, until I realized that that was never going to change. And I had to understand that. And there's some impactful practices that you can do around forgiveness. And one is understanding the situation. And there are some extreme situations that this will not apply to. But in general, when you're trying to forgive somebody, and if you can understand, like I understood that my mum did not have the capacity or the ability to see the situation for what it was, I was able to accept that. And once I accepted that for exactly what it was, I was able to just let go of the control and the need to have understanding. And I was able to just start living and creating a life that I wanted, the life that I wanted to write. And then I was in a breathwork session, and I was actually going on my journey, and I experienced soul ties, and I experienced this moment where I realized that I was still connected. And again, just like we visualized the ball and chain just before, I actually was able to cut my soul tie and release all the expectations. And it really changed my life in that moment, and it set me free almost. And it was such an amazing thing. And that's what forgiveness has the power to do. It has the power to set you free. And again, it is not your fault for the things that have happened to you, but it is your responsibility to heal. And part of that healing is forgiving things that have happened to you. And maybe, just maybe, they happened for you and not to you. And that's another realization that I had, that when certain events that took place in my life actually caused a lot of pain and suffering and actually shifted and altered my path, the choices that I continued to make, the coping mechanisms that I created were from certain things. I was able to actually turn that around and forgive by accepting, acknowledging, and pushing through the pain into a place of freedom. So forgiveness doesn't mean that you have to allow that person back into your life either. Forgiveness doesn't mean that what they did is okay. It doesn't mean that you are going to be like buddies again. Forgiveness, again, is just releasing you from them, from that situation. It's saying, you know what? It caused me pain. I'm in a place where I need to forgive you, and I do, but this no longer serves me. I'm not going to be a part of this. And you actually have the power to start putting boundaries in place to say, I'm not going to be in an environment where I need to forgive people anymore. Sometimes we need to take accountability and ask, why are these things happening to us? And again, it's not the extreme things of forgiveness that I'm talking to. I'm just speaking in general around forgiveness. And remember that unforgiveness is like drinking poison, expecting somebody else to get sick. And when it's really you are the only one that is getting hurt and continuing to stay in a place of suffering. So I encourage you to explore and try and understand where and why your forgiveness is not being given. And do yourself a favor and let it go. Because when you let things go, you create space for more of what you want, more of what you deserve. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. And if you need more support, if you're struggling to forgive somebody, we have some processes that we go through in the quantum coaching course. It's life-changing. I've done the work myself, and I've experienced being able to forgive and being able to move on. Remember, forgiving doesn't mean you're going to forget what they did. It just means that you are free from what they did. So if you like this podcast, make sure you give us a 5-star review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and follow us on all social media platforms. And I'll see you in the next episode.